Hello, everybody. Tea with Jess time on Wednesdays at 3 Eastern Standard Time. And I'm glad you all could join not just me today, but the renowned Victoria Thompson, who I know as Vicki. So I'm so excited to have you here today, Vicki. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing career, and then I've got questions for you.
Well, I've been writing. I published my first book in 1985 and published 20 historical romances. And then I switched to writing historical mysteries, and I've done 24 of them.
Wow.
Working on 25 at the moment. And I live in the Chicago area with my husband, and I've a little dog.
That's neat. That's exciting. I'm so in awe of you and your career. And we're talking today specifically because Murder on Pleasant Avenue came out just I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, and it's your 23rd Gaslight Mystery series. So wow, and congratulations. And tell us what inspired the Gaslight Mystery series.
Well, it's a funny story, and if you've heard it already, I'm sorry. I apologize because I tell it all the time. But I had been writing historical romances. This was back in the 1990s, and my historical romance career had bottomed out. The sales had dropped on those books, and cowboys went out of style. I was writing about cowboys, and they sort of went out of style. So publisher dumped me. And I was trying to, oddly enough, I was trying to write a contemporary thriller. And I kept sending proposals to my agent, and she would send them out, and I'd get glowing rejections, and nobody was in my thrillers. So she kept trying to convince me I should write a mystery series. And I just was not, I said at one point, the 13 stupidest words I ever said in my life. I said, ew, I don't want to be stuck writing the same characters over and over again. So, but she kept trying to nudge me in that direction. And then one day she called me up and she said, I just had lunch with an editor from Berkeley, and they were looking for somebody to write a series set in turn of the century New York City, where the heroine was a midwife. And at the time, my daughter had just started college at NYU. And we had, one weekend, we'd gone up to visit her, and we walked all around Greenwich Village, and we'd actually bought a couple books on the history of Greenwich Village just because we were interested. And that's what we do, historical people do that. So I had already done some research. And I was at the time working for the March of Dimes, and some of my volunteers were actually midwives. So I thought, this is kismet. I was born to write this series. So I wrote a proposal. They said the heroine was a midwife. That was pretty much all they gave me. And they suggested that she be a poor relation of a rich family. But I decided, no, she needed to be able to travel in all levels of society. So I made her the rebellious daughter of a rich family. So she still had that cachet. She could go if she wanted to into Mrs. Astor's house if she wanted to, but she had rebelled and married her and had become a nurse herself. She was a nurse and midwife. So, and then he had been murdered. Her husband had been murdered. So she's a widow, but she refuses to go back to her wealthy life, and she's working in the slums as a midwife. So, that's how the series was born. And they gave me a 3-book contract to start. I was so excited. I thought, 3 books. I would write a 3-book series. Wow. Whoever, people are like, did you know it was going to go on this long? Of course I didn't know it was going to go on that long. I would be like so excited. I was hoping it would go on for 6 books. Seriously, that I never even imagined it would go on so long. I would have planned a little more carefully had I known that.
Oh, that's fabulous, though. You were definitely meant to write this series. So since you didn't pre-plan 23, 24, 25, 30 books in advance. Um, how has the series changed for you over the years in terms of how you approach it as a writer, in terms of themes or character?
Well, the characters have grown, and that's, I think, one of the secrets of a successful series is to give your main protagonist room to grow,
Mhm.
give lots of baggage to start with, and one by one they drop each piece of it as they grow up. But in the beginning, I realized that a midwife is not typically in the normal course of her life going to be coming across murder victims. So, in order to give her more access to solving murders, I paired her up with a police detective whose job it was to solve murders. So it made sense for that to happen. And of course, at that time, the police force was almost all made up of Irish Catholics. And as an Irish Catholic, Frank would be so far removed from Sarah, who's daughter of an old Knickerbocker family. So she was like the epitome of society, high society, and he was the epitome of low society. So the two of them could never, ever have gotten together in normal circumstances. I've been trying to figure out what a modern day similarity would be. And I said it would be as if Ivanka Trump married the Mexican gardener. Oh, they would be like that. You just couldn't even imagine it happening.
I-
What
whew.
it would have been like. So,
Wow.
um, so they were so far apart, and I thought, well, when the series ends in the last book, I'll get them together and they'll get married in the last book. And then the series just kept going on and on. And I realized if they got married, he would never have asked her to marry him because if she married him, she would go down socially to his level, and she would never have been accepted into the finer homes again. And so he would never have done that to her, no matter how much he might want to be with her. So, and she wouldn't have cared, but he cared very much. So that there was just no way around it. And I finally realized that she had to, something had to happen. It just kept going on, and I couldn't keep them apart any longer. And oddly enough, I was getting my master's degree at Seton Hill University, and one of my fellow students, I was in a class where we were talking about how to promote your books, and I expressed to my classmates my quandary that I had this couple I couldn't get them together, and I said I think I'm going to have a contest and ask my readers to make suggestions. And one of my fellow students said, "I accept your challenge," and he sent me a list of 20 ideas for how we could get together. And I thought I was very skeptical. I gotta admit, because he wrote science fiction. He had never read anything I wrote. He didn't knew nothing about the series. I thought, how could he come up with an idea? But sometimes ignorance is the best thing because he was not bound by any pre-knowledge. He could come up with any ideas.
Yeah.
And reading down the list, thinking, oh no, that's stupid. No, no, that would never work. And I came to this one and I thought, wait a minute, not only could that work, it could work in the book I was writing at that very moment. It was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
it's like, my brain just exploded, and I thought, this is it. So I rewarded him by naming one of the characters in the book after him. So that's David Wilbeck who did that, and it was before your time, Sharon, but he was quite a character. But anyway, he gave me this idea. So I was finally able to get Sarah and Frank married. But then that changed the whole dynamic. And in order for them to get married, Frank had to be rich because
Mm.
in America, as we all know, is great equalizer. It doesn't matter who you use. You're a millionaire, you're okay society. So he suddenly becomes socially acceptable because he's got a lot of money. And so what was I going to say? I forget, I lost my
Oh, we're
train of.
talking about characters and how it's changed.
Yes, and so they were finally able to get married, but that changed everything. He could no longer be a policeman because the policeman, he was jealous. The other policemen were jealous of him, and how could he work? Nobody would take him seriously because they think he was a dilettante because he was so rich he didn't need to work. So he had to quit his job as a police detective. So then he becomes a private investigator. So now he can investigate anybody that he feels like. He doesn't even have to worry if they can pay him because he's rich. So he can do it as a favor to people, or he can charge them depending on who it is and what the circumstances are. So it sort of opened up a whole new dynamic. And his partner at the police department became his partner in the detective agency. So he's got this young Italian boy working for him. And along the way, Sarah had picked up a child that she had, an abandoned child that she wanted to adopt and had taken in. And so she had to have a nanny to take care of this. So this young girl is her nanny, and she started helping solve the mystery. So it's like, everything just sort of got out of control. These people started doing things I never planned, never dreamed that they would do, or that they would be major characters in the story.
What fun. And I should just note that you referred to Seton Hill, and you said that was before my time. Vicki is an instructor at Seton Hill in the writing popular fiction MFA program. And I was very briefly for about 3 years, I think, worked in that role as well. So that's how we met in person. I'd admired you, of course, for a long time. So it was great to meet in person through that experience and to remain friends.
Right.
So one way you keep the series fresh for you and your readers is, you send out surveys to get feedback. Are there other ways that you keep it fresh for you and your readers?
That's a really good question. And I'm not sure I know the answer. If I knew how I've done it, I would write it. Other people could figure it out too. I think part of the secret is to create characters that your readers are going to fall in love with and want to see over and over again. I always tell my students that people come to mystery for the plot, but they come back for the characters.
Ooh.
So, the first time they read it, they think, "Oh, that was a good mystery," but I wonder what's going to happen to these people. And the next series come out, and they have to read it because they have to find out what's not only read for the mystery, but find out what happened to these people that they've come to care about. So that's part of the secret of and somehow by accident, I created two characters that people really, really like. And then I've surrounded them with people that they also really, really like. Sarah's parents turned out to be very interesting and very helpful. And now Gino and Maeve have taken some starring roles in the series that people are now starting to nag me about when Gino and Maeve are going to get married.
That's book 50.
Exactly.
Hang in there, readers.
Young, and they're like, people got married young in those days.
Yeah, well, they're rebels. I like that idea of a rebellious daughter, even though I have 2 daughters. That's a great point, though, that people come to mysteries for the plot, but they hang around for the characters. I think that alone tells me you should be writing that craft book that you referenced. That's really brilliant. Yeah, I like that. So we live in interesting times, as you and I were discussing earlier today. We're all living in interesting times right now. So why do you think stories set in the past resonate with modern readers? I mean, now we could say we'd like to escape to the past, but overall, why do you think stories set in the past resonate with modern readers?
Well, I think there's always that element of escape, and fiction is an escape, regardless of where we are, even when times are good. Our everyday life can be boring. It can be difficult in many, many ways, and even no matter how happy we are, it's nice to get away sometimes. Even no matter how much we love our children, it's nice to get away from them every now and then. And that's what fiction does for us. It gives us another world to go to. We don't have to leave the house to do it. And historicals take you even further away from your everyday life, because the past is another country. They do things differently there. And the people who enjoy that, reading historicals, love finding out stuff that happened in the past, how a flashlight got to be called a flashlight, or why it's called that. I mean, just little things like that. People love learning stuff that that's painless. Nobody likes to go to school, but people love stuff, interesting stuff. It's sort of like gossip. You're telling people things that happened in the past, and it's that gossipy stuff that people love to learn about. And also what's kept me fascinated by writing about the past is that the things that people were concerned about 100 years ago are exactly the same things that we're concerned about today. The technology has changed, but people have not changed. People are the and the things that they care about are the same. And it's fun to explore those things historically and show people how people handled those situations then, and that there's still a problem today 100 years later. Nobody's solved them. Like, people hated immigrants 100 years ago. People
Yeah.
hate today. It's like the countries the immigrants came from changed, but the attitude toward immigrants is still the same. And every wave of immigrants has the same kind of prejudice and the same accusations, and they have all assimilated and brought their food and their culture to enrich American lives and gone on about their business. And the next wave of immigrants came along and took their place. So, I mean, my grandparents were Italian immigrants, and they suffered the same kind of prejudice that immigrants are suffering today, and yet nobody thinks Italians are immigrants now.
Right. Yeah, and we love the richness of culture, the food, like you say, and then the art that the people from Italy or other countries bring to us.
Where would America be without Italian food?
Hungry. So we have a couple of questions that have popped in on Facebook, which is exciting. A couple of comments. Adele Perlman says Sarah's mom is a trip. And Rachel Zeller says that she loves that each book visits many different neighborhoods. So that's pretty cool. Holly Castor is curious about two things. She wonders if you ever teach courses online, which yeah, now you do. But I think she means in general outside of Seton Hill. And she also asks, which I think is a great question as well as her other one, what does your typical writing day entail?
Okay, the answer about the online classes is no, I don't at this time, because I'm teaching at Seton Hill University, and it's
Right.
much takes up my time. The other question was, what was the other question?
Oh, she wants to know what your typical writing day would entail.
I am so lazy. My typical day is I sit down at the computer about 9 o'clock and look at Facebook and my email and fiddle around and mess around all morning long, and then eat lunch.
I'd love to know that. Wow, we have the same routine, Vicki. That's awesome.
And then after lunch, I sit down and get serious, and I start writing. And how I start out every day is I read over what I wrote the day before or the last time I wrote, whatever that was. I read that over to get me back in the story and to edit whatever I wrote before. And then I move on, and I try to write 5 pages every day at least. Sometimes when I'm in the groove, and do more, or if the deadline is looming, I have to do more. But I try to do at least 5 pages every day, and 20 pages a week. And if I meet that goal, then I can take off 3 days or 2 days or however long I've got left. If I don't make that goal, then I have to write on the weekend to make it up so that I get my chapter in every week. So, and yeah, and then when I'm on deadline, I'm writing 10 pages a day and writing every minute and not even watching TV in the evening.
What? Oh, that's amazing. So Larry Sheaf wants to know, will we ever see a map of the areas of New York the various stories are set?
Oh my goodness.
That's a great question, because several other people have commented that they really enjoy seeing the different neighborhoods. And one reader posted, let's see, that she wants to see Sarah go into Brooklyn. So,
Yeah, I haven't touched the outer boroughs yet, so
Yeah. And we
hopefully
need a map. What do you think? Do you think he's got a great idea there?
murder in Brooklyn, murder in Queens, Staten Island. We could do those, all of those. It's funny, the neighborhoods, that was another thing that sort of was given to me when I turned in my first manuscript, which ended up being called Murder in Astor Place. I had called it Cradle to Grave or some brilliant thing like that. Anyway, I turned it in, and I went and had lunch with my editor and my agent in New York. To celebrate turning in my manuscript. And my editor pulled out a copy of what the cover art was going to look like. And if you've seen Murder on Astor Place, it's this rain wet street with the gaslight shining down a red shawl that's laying on the street. And if you look closely, the red shawl looks like a skull. It's really cool. And I was so excited. And she said, and she said, all the books will have a gaslight on them. And we want to name the books Murder on Some Street in New York City. So we had not chosen a name at that point. And of course, I was unaware of this when I wrote the book, so I didn't put a street name in there. So we were sitting there and the three of us are trying to think of what is the coolest street name in New York City. And we were just a few blocks away from Astor Place. And so we decided that would be the name of the first book, Murder on Astor Place. And I pointed out, well, okay, Astor Place is not in the book because I didn't know any of this when I was, and there's no red shawl in the book either. So, and my editor said, oh, don't worry about it. When I send you your revision letter, you can put that in when you're doing your revisions. So I said, okay, no problem. So I left the lunch of the restaurant, which was interestingly enough, had a cow theme, although it was little black and white cows everywhere. But anyway, it's not there. But anyway, so I was just a few blocks away, so I walked down Astor Place, and there was literally nothing on that street. It was it's a very short street, and I think there were a couple businesses, but there was nobody lived there or anything. It was like, okay. So a month goes by, and then another month, and nothing happened. And so this is my first time working with this editor. I didn't want to be, nagging or anything, but I sent her an email. I said, if you sent my revision letter, I didn't get it. What's taking you so long? And she writes back, oh, didn't I tell you? I didn't think you needed to do any revisions. So
oh my gosh.
That was sort of good news, bad news. I said, this is really nice to hear that I don't have to do any revisions, but there is still no red shawl and there's no place.
Yipes.
So she let me have the manuscript back, and I figured out a place to put Astor. Sarah walks down Astor Place at one point. Nothing really happens there, and I put the red shawl in the book, and that was it. So, so that's how we came up with the neighborhood themes. And so, a lot of the streets in New York City are numbers.
Mm.
Murder on 74th Street just doesn't have much of a ring to it. So it's you have to really always pull out these maps. And oddly enough, the book I'm working on now, or the book that just came out, I should say, the book that just came out, Murder on Pleasant Avenue. Originally, I was going to call it Murder in Italian Harlem because I could not find a street name that I liked. It was set in what is actually East Harlem, which became known as Spanish Harlem in the 50s and 60s. And but at that time, 100 years ago, it was Italian Harlem because the people who lived there were Italians. And but my editors, when she took it to the sales team, they didn't like it. They didn't like because the Harlem, to modern readers, the word Harlem's like a bad place. So they didn't think it'd be a good name for the book. And so my agent looked at a map and she found Pleasant Avenue, which is this huge street. I don't know why I didn't see it when I was looking at the map myself, but I didn't see it. So anyway, we decided that would be the perfect name because Murder and Pleasant were such
yeah.
Made a nice.
I love that.
I got to explore the Italian immigrants, which I love doing because I'm Italian, so myself.
Let's see. So Anne Royer, we have time for a couple more questions, and then I'll let you go. But Anne Royer said, do you ever do any research at New York Public Library?
No, I do. I never go to New York anymore. I used to when I lived closer. My daughter was there. My daughter lived there she went to NYU and then she lived there for about 5 years after she graduated, but she now lives in LA, so it doesn't help me at all. And I really don't have any reason to go to New York anymore. And I can find most of what I need. These books behind me are all my research books.
Ooh, oh, look at this, people. Insight into the office, the inner sanctum of Victoria Thompson.
So pretty much anything I need to know, I just turn my chair around and pull a book off the shelf. Or I do it on the internet because the internet's a wonderful thing, great resource. And I'm actually on the library board of my local library. So I'm there a lot myself for everything, for other things too. But they can either they have books or they could get me books from interlibrary loan if I need them. So so no, I don't go to the New York Public Library.
Well, we're getting lots of comments about how much they love your books, which is awesome. Yay. Thank you everyone for commenting. But we've had a couple comments that, they want to hear a little bit more about your other book series. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Talk about that. That's the Counterfeit Ladies series.
Right.
3 books, and the fourth book is coming out this November, and I will soon, as soon as I'm finished with the Gaslight Mystery I'm writing right now, we'll be working on the next Counterfeit Lady book. But the Counterfeit Lady book was started. I wanted to write a second series, and I kicked around all kinds of ideas. And my editor had advised me to look at the early 20th century. And so I'd done a whole bunch of research, and I found all this information about the suffragists, the women who demonstrated and worked for the women's right to vote. And in 1917, those women decided they were going to demonstrate outside the White House until President Wilson supported the women's right to vote, the amendment to the Constitution. And so they demonstrated outside the White House every freaking day.
Yes.
They didn't do it on Sundays, but Monday through every single day, rain or shine, sweltering heat. If I'm Washington D.C., the heat is horrendous. And they were there marching with their banners. And by November, President Wilson was getting really annoyed because he had to every time he went in or out of his house. So he had the police arrest them. Arrested them. They were charged with blocking traffic, I think, some stupid thing, which they weren't even doing on the sidewalk, but whatever. And so they put them in jail overnight and then let them go. Thought this would scare them. But instead, it just made them angry and more women to demonstrate. So he kept arresting them and letting them go. So finally, he arrested this group of women in November and sentenced them to 6 months in a workhouse. So I thought, oh, this is a great story that needs to be told, but people didn't. And these women went to the workhouse. They were fed maggoty food. They went on a hunger strike. They were beaten. I mean, this is a story that people don't realize, that women take for granted the right to vote, but people really suffered. Other women suffered in order to win this right for them. And I thought, this is a story that needs to be told. But how do you tell it without making it sound like a history lesson? Nobody. Right. So I needed a story to put this into. And I had done research about con artists for another book, one of the Gaslight books, oddly enough. And so I knew a bit about con artists, and I thought, how about if a con artist was running away from a con that had gone bad, and she joined up with this group of get arrested, knowing, I mean, she'd seen in the newspapers that they were arrested. They always let them go the next day, so she could get away from these guys who were trying to beat her up from cheating them. And she would go into jail overnight and then escape. Perfect plan, right? But then sentenced to 6 months in the workhouse with these other women.
Oops.
So whoops. While she's locked up with these women, she sort of bonds with them and realizes that, and she becomes a suffragist herself, and a believer in women's rights. And she falls in love with the son of one of the women she was jailed with, and who turns out to be the only honest man she has ever known.
Oh,
Con artists always say you can't cheat an honest man, and that's to them a joke because they don't think anyone is honest. They think anyone could be cheated. But Gabriel is honest. He doesn't even tell white lies.
oh, that's neat.
So he ends um she ends up in subsequent books then realizing she can use her powers for good. She has all these con artist skills, use them for good. So she helps people that the law cannot help, that are in situations that, justice will not help them at all. They need to be skinned out of the money to help them. So she's really good at it. So she and her family do that. And Gideon, bless his heart, tries to help her, but she's always telling him, Gideon, you're a terrible liar. You cannot help me. so so he does help her in ways that are okay for him. Half the time they never tell him what's going on, so he's like this innocent bystander. But yeah, I've had a fun with those books, and trying to figure out how to work a con into the story. And
Yeah,
it's
neat.
the last one I did, the Scoundrels, I believe is what it's called. It was I wanted to use the con, the Spanish Prisoner, which is a very old con, and I ended up doing 3 versions of that con, and halfway through the book, I realized, uh-oh, I have 3 cons going, and I could solve all 3 of them in 1 paragraph.
Oh no.
A very short book, and I thought, uh-oh, okay, so how can I interlace, get them all connected? And so I had to make a chart because it was so complicated. I couldn't keep it straight in my head. I had to do a full chart, and I thought, oh, this could be really cool. And so that's what it ended up being, that all 3 of the cons sort of intersected at the end, and
Wow.
so it's challenging to write those books.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us, and thank you everybody for tuning in. I didn't get to see all the comments, but I'm looking forward to looking at them later. And I know we'll save this interview and post it where other people can see it too. And for everybody watching now or later, a great way to help Vicki and me, besides buying or borrowing our books, is definitely post a review wherever you got the book from. Review her books on Goodreads, on Amazon, tell your friends, give reviews on other resources. Word of mouth is really just more important now than ever. It's always been crucial, but it's more important now than ever for writers like Vicki. And we really want to get to book 50 and see that other couple get married. So
Brooklyn.
and we want to go to Brooklyn. That's right. So thank you again. I'm really appreciate everybody.
Yes, it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.